All right, everyone, it's showtime. Okay, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. As most of you know, my name's Grant Wilson. I'm Executive Chairman of Tivan Limited and want to welcome you to this annual general meeting of Tivan Limited. It's now 4:30 p.m, probably a little bit past, in Melbourne, and I call this annual general meeting of Tivan Limited to order. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country on which we stand. I'd also like to acknowledge the Nandjua native title claimants in the area of East Kimberley, where we are building the Speewah project, along with Yurragun Tarm from the town of Halls Creek in the Kimberley. I know that representatives of both Nandjua and Yurragun Tarm will be dialing in from afar today, so I also wanted to acknowledge them. I'd also like to welcome Stéphane LeBlanc, all the way from Montreal in Canada. Thank you so much, Stéphane, for joining us. Stéphane's been part of our technical advisory group for a couple of years. Simon Flowers, also from our technical advisory group, has travelled not quite as far from Darwin, but also a big welcome to Simon this afternoon. Along with Graham and Louise Tuckwell, we'll come to Graham and Louise in due course. They haven't travelled far at all, to be frank, but very important contribution to Tivan this year, and a big welcome on behalf of the board today. Without further ado, we're going to jump straight into the agenda for the meeting and the substantive presentation. As much as this is an annual general meeting of an ASX-listed company, for many of us, it's also a stocktake on 3 years of brutally difficult work, blood, sweat, a few tears along the way, culminating in the year that we've just had. We'll go through some of the achievements of the company this year. It's also today, I think, an invitation. It's an invitation for all of you, owners of the company, to join us for the next 3 years as we build a really important company across the north of Australia. Thank you for being here. Our agenda for today. So I'll start off with a company update, then we're going to hear from our board, similar format to last year, a chance then to welcome Graham Tuckwell to the stage for some comments on behalf of ETS Capital, and then we're going to hear from the team. One of the big developments at Tivan this year has been a really significant expansion of the team. For a lot of you that are highly engaged, you'll know some of the names, but you haven't had a chance to meet them in person, so I wanted to pull people up on the stage this year and have a chance to start to socialise with people that are helping to build this company from the ground up. We then will, of course, hear from all of you. I'm sure Larry's going to go first, true to form, in Q&A from the floor. So many people here today, standing room only for those that are online. So thanks once again. We do want to have a highly engaged Q&A session, so we'll look forward to that before we get into the resolutions and voting. There will not be any surprises on the outcome of the votes today. And then, of course, refreshments and dinner. We'll be hosting here tonight, gorgeous afternoon in Melbourne, and a chance to for everyone to get to know each other. Okay. So, as you all know, this time last year on this stage, we stood up and we redefined the mission of Tivan Limited. For the first 18 months, it was, and I make no apologies for this, an exercise in survival, picking up a company that had fallen into the abyss and trying to find a way out of that abyss, and holding together confidence of the registry in a very, very difficult market situation as well. We did find our path out, and we had a chance at the AGM last year to redefine the corporate mission, which is to build a strategically important company across Northern Australia. We also last year identified 8 comparative advantages which have held us in very good stead this year as the tide has come into the critical minerals sector. You'll see a lot of other companies now reaching for the narrative, but in my view they have not demonstrated the sorts of comparative advantages that we have built around the company, and it is those comparative advantages which I believe will keep us on a path to durable success in the years ahead. In terms of the year that we had, won't dwell too much here, but for those that are following the company, you'll have seen us build out our project suite very extensively. We've often talked about the Lassonde curve as a way to conceptualise the portfolio of projects that we're building. We've highlighted extensively over the past 18 months the importance of building out a portfolio of projects across Northern Australia in lockstep with Japan. So we made a big decision at the board level several years ago now to go all in on Japan. We've said this many times, and we've seen, I think, this year moments where the critical minerals thematic has popped up and it's mutated perhaps towards the US or to Europe, even Korea at different times. We feel very, very comfortable having positioned Tivan squarely with Japan. We now have 3 independent agreements with Sumitomo Corporation at different projects. And of course, proudly we announced in the middle of this year that the joint venture for the Speewah Fluorite project was going to be co-financed by JOGMEC, the Japanese government. An incredible landmark achievement for a young company on the way up. And I think testament to the technical capabilities that we've brought together, along with the differentiated project path that we are building at the Speewah Fluorite project. So you'll see on that slinky 4 different projects that we've added to the portfolio in the space of 12 months. That is aggressive, to say the least. But we did have, I think, the foresight that perhaps was lacking elsewhere to understand that the critical minerals thematic was going to come back. I think on this stage last year, I explained my expectations around tariffs, my expectations around the Trump administration, my expectations around Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, a former investor of mine, and how they were going to roll out policies that would influence the geopolitical situation across the Asia-Pacific. All of that has played out, especially through Q2. Our company is positioned well ahead of that. It's impossible, in fact, for anyone to catch up with what we've achieved, especially in fluorite. And we've pushed on now in 2 different frontiers. One is to other critical minerals in Australia, specifically being tungsten and molybdenum, with the acquisition of the Molly Hill project a couple of months ago. And of course, Project X. Did I call it Project X? Project Y? I can't remember. So many projects. I think it was Project X. We had a guessing game this time last year. And Project X, of course, turned out to be Timor-Leste, incredibly important achievement, which I'll talk to a bit more depth on the subsequent slides. But suffice to say, we have put together a path now, which I believe can hold the company both in terms of differentiation from other companies in Australia, but in long-term good stead. We have the foundations now, we have the team now, and most importantly, we have the backing and the partnerships required to get through at a time where we're seeing generational shifts in government policies towards the critical minerals sector, which our board can elaborate upon. So we've simplified our achievements on this chart, but it has been a year of absolutely frenetic activity. We continue to emphasise our open, transparent, timely communications. Twitter plays a part of that, but our ASX channel is alive and it will remain that way. We will be able to navigate our way through quieter periods at different projects because we have so much going on at the company, and we also now have the ability to bankroll different projects at different development stages so that there is a continuum of activity at the company in the months, quarters and years ahead. A final point before I leave this slide. One of the most challenging aspects of the turnaround from the company this was to the company this is now is on the corporate side. We didn't talk too much about this at the time because the company was under so much financial pressure. It's not something that you necessarily want to emphasise. The company was suspended on the ASX February of 2024. Very, very difficult time for our board as well as the team. I want to thank our shareholders at this point. Now that we have turned the company around, we've delevered the company after a series of very aggressive financial moves that we undertook to get through involving leverage. And over the past 12 months, we've been able to pay all of that financing down, avoid dilution at the head company level, structure joint ventures, multiple joint ventures ahead as well, I believe, take advantage of government grants, and essentially avoid the pitfalls that are glaringly apparent to anyone that's worked in finance in the broker proponent relationship in Australia by doing it ourselves and raising money principally offshore. So we have been able to transform the company financially, and I think I can say sitting here at the end of the year, this is probably the first time going into December that we're not facing an existential funding crisis in the first quarter of next year. So I do owe a debt of thanks to our shareholders for getting us through. It was brutal. Thank you. I've promised you guys a book. When you read the chapters on what we did to get through, you will be shocked. But it's all behind us now, and we can look forward with great confidence. We are flush. We get to make great decisions now, and we have been all year. So briefly, at Speewah, the key point to emphasise is that we are building a new export capability for the country. It's critically important. People didn't understand at the start when we announced fluorite just how important this sector could be for Australia. I think when Japan showed up in the way that they have, which is so uncharacteristic, people started to pay attention to it. Now that we're deep into the project development cycle, people are paying even more attention. That includes us shipping samples a couple of days ago to customers throughout Asia. We've identified not just the midstream, but all the way downstream to strategically important companies right through Asia, most especially in the semiconductor sector. Speewah will be our proving ground as a company. I think we have now demonstrated great success and discipline in being able to run successfully an ASX-listed company. But of course, we have to execute a project. Speewah is a great project to prove ourselves on. It's the right size. It's not as technically demanding as many of the other projects that are floating around, particularly in the rare earths sector. We have been in the field now for 3 years. That informs all of the baselines on environmental studies, which are critically important in the quarters ahead. And of course, we've spent 2 to 3 years now with traditional owners in the East Kimberley. It's been a great joy being on country with the mob and to get to know everyone, including with cultural heritage protection regimes that have been in place all year at site. We're looking forward with positivity towards the pathways that we've agreed towards Indigenous land use agreements, and we hope to be able to achieve durable alignment with the traditional owners, not just at Speewah and around, but in Central Australia, which is the site of our next major project initiative. So we're very proud of the work that we've done at Speewah. The resource was sitting there, the project was sitting there, no one understood its importance until we came along. It's a very good illustration of market inefficiency, and it strikes a chord, I think, because it demonstrates part of the business model of Tivan now, which is that we have this capability and opportunity across Northern Australia with our competitive advantages to identify deep value and to pull projects out of the so-called orphan phase and to develop them quickly. The return on equity for Tivan shareholders associated with the Speewah acquisition is incredible, and it will remain so. And so we're approaching this with a great deal of discipline, a great deal of energy, a great deal of humility. We know we have a big challenge still ahead, but we know that the opportunity to build the company runs through Speewah, and we know as well that if we get Speewah right over the next year in particular to FID, the market will start to appreciate that this is a very real company, a very serious company, and that we'll be able to rinse and repeat the model that we've shown here in Central Australia and hopefully in Timor-Leste as well. In Central Australia, many of you will know that I grew up in Alice Springs. The passion is there. This was the reason I did what I did at the start, and I stand by those decisions to run the activist campaign and to take that chance. I couldn't have anticipated that we were going to come back to Central Australia in the way that we have, but certainly we've always been looking for opportunities. 2 have come along, we've grabbed both of them. Sandover Fluorite was this time last year. It is still a miracle to us sitting here today that this incredible, most likely world-class resource was sitting there and that we got our hands on it for $500,000. Again, just an incredible example of how inefficient value identification is in the critical mineral sector. We're going to be starting to drill next week. We're super excited to find out exactly how wide these veins are, how deep they are, more about the mineralogy. We know that the vein system is vast, absolutely vast. We know that the site is very accessible and very manageable in terms of it being flat country, easy non-process infrastructure. And we have been working out in Central Australia on the Sandover project writ large for a couple of years, as well as healing with the Central Land Council, not myself as such, but the mess that was left behind from the previous management. And so we feel like we're in an ideal position with Sandover fluorite. We have the full support of the NT government. Our Japanese partners are super excited because, of course, Japan thinks long-term. Wherever the Speewah fluorite project lands in terms of life of mine, and we don't know. We're starting at 10 years. We hope to get to 20. We believe that Sandover fluorite will be the logical extension and that we can create this continuous long-term value proposition from Australia to Japan and to their key customers. That's incredibly appealing to Sumitomo, to JOGMEC and to the Japanese government and to end users in Asia. They don't necessarily want to pivot away from critical supply chains, which may be housed in China, for example, if it is for 5 years or 10 years. If Tivan can stitch these two projects together, and we believe we can, and head towards 30, 40, 50, maybe longer years of resource life, then we have an incredibly important strategic value proposition for Australia, for Asia, in the most critical sectors. Does not get more critical than the semiconductor sector in Asia. We've emphasised this point. So we're working on very important projects in fluorite, and from mid-year we recognised that there could be an opportunity to get our hands on Molly Hill. Now, Molly Hill was owned by those same groups that owned Sandover fluorite last year. There were some changes in management at those companies which afforded us an opportunity to start a new dialogue. Naturally, we were keen. Tungsten is on the very select list of things that are very important to Japan, molybdenum as well. It's a relatively small resource at this stage, but we believe there's a lot of upside exploration potential. This will start to reveal itself as early as March of next year, where we believe and know that we already have the key approvals in place to drill, which will be an exciting moment. The grades at Molly Hill on the tungsten and molybdenum are world-class. They're extremely high, especially for the first 2 years of mining. This means that when we come to finance Molly Hill, we'll be able to get our payback period down to a very compressed level. And we want to structure it as a joint venture, once again, to have the optimal outcome for Tivan shareholders, and I'll come to that in a second. So we're looking forward to pushing forward with Molly Hill and turning Tivan into bona fide critical minerals company next year. You'll see a huge uplift in activity and news flow from us regarding Molly Hill and Sandover next year. The vision of creating a critical minerals precinct in Central Australia, it may sound grandiose to some, it's not in our hands. Very confident about this, and it's one of the most important purposes and driving motivations at Tivan. Finally, Timor. What a joy this has been all year. I'll have Christine talk about this when we do the Fireside Chat for the board. But it started late last year. I might blame Michael Fuss, he's here today. It was one of his prompts, and suddenly realised that there's an opportunity to leverage relationships that I really already had. And we managed to do that through Christmas, get our hands on some key tenements in the past month that has extended now to a pretty incredible situation where Tivan owns all of the mineral concessions, where there's copper prospectivity in Timor-Leste, one of our neighbouring countries, an incredibly important geostrategic country, and right next door. Perhaps the easiest way to phrase this is that we now have, if we sum Turiscai, Bacau and Osu, where we already have early stage exploration results in copper, gold, zinc, cobalt as well. The combined land area of these concessions is 4.3% of Timor-Leste, the country. To give you a sense of what that means, Victoria, where we are today, is 3% of Australia. So we have an enormous responsibility now to do right by Timor, because we have the commanding heights of the country. We'll be investing in this project, both in terms of cash flow, people, capabilities, time on the ground. We believe there is a resource there, maybe many resources there. We are in discussions already, not just with the Timor-Leste's government in terms of joint venture with their state-owned mining company, but with Japan. And I think this will be the one opportunity that we have currently on our balance sheet, which could really take the lid off Tivan. As much as we're excited about Speewah and the vision that we have for Central Australia is critically important, especially for me personally. These opportunities are bounded at some level in terms of how big they could be. Timor is unbounded. We don't know what's up there in terms of scale and size, but we know that we have the social license, we know that we have the appetite and the skills and the capabilities, and this adventure is really just starting. So as I said in my introductory comments, sitting here today, please accept this as an invitation. This is still just the infancy of Tivan the next 3 years. These project sites that we're working on, all three, will advance further and will end up at a point, I believe, where we start to create really sustained shareholder value at the company. A very brief slide here, and then I'll move to wrap up my introductory remarks and chairman's remarks this year. We get asked a lot about what the company's fair value is, and so many conversations when we're on the road about share price, and obviously there's a large online community as well that focuses pretty much on this topic rather than the broader mission that we are trying to pursue. And I don't want to get too far into this because, as I've said several times, it's very important, especially for our retail shareholders, to have a healthy relationship with the stock. That's the phrase that I used at the start of the year. I stand by it. We do not obsess at Tivan on the day-to-day, and in general, when asked on comments directly on share price, we pass. What I want to emphasise with this slide, you can piece it apart in the week ahead, is that there are some comments online at the moment which reveal a pretty significant lack of financial understanding on how to value a company or any company, our company, into the future. My expectation, and this is my expectation, is that in the next couple of years we'll tend to see the company valued more off forward-looking earnings multiples. That is to say, it will be a function of how much the market believes Tivan can earn at our different projects, divided by the number of shares on issue, times by some form of earnings multiple. My expectation is that we will now be able to stabilise shares on issue in a way which is radically different than pretty much any other critical minerals company or rare earths company in Australia. All of these companies are diluting their shareholders successively. They're trying to finance single projects at the head company level whenever you see some form of government support for the sector, as we just saw in the past couple of months, and the share price pops. The first thing that all of these companies do is rush to their nearest broker, issue a bunch of shares, collapse the share price, keep their jobs for another couple of quarters, rinse and repeat. It's an appalling game that's being played. Tivan wants no part of it, and the way that we've designed the company is fundamentally different. We're using joint ventures to finance projects. Tivan ends up with a percentage of those projects as a result. We end up with stronger alignment as a result because we're bringing in partners that can add value to the projects. That could be Japan with their incredible offtake networks. It could be ETFS Capital with their incredible financial acumen and agility. And so we have the ability to manage multiple JVs and to avoid situations where Tivan's coming back to the market. We've been incredibly efficient. We picked this company up where it had around 1.4 billion shares on issue. I think it'll cap out now around 2.5. Some of the options will get exercised. But absent some big change in strategy, which I can't currently see, involving Tivan taking out a big company, I expect that our shares on issue will start to head towards the fully diluted outcome, stabilise and hold steady, even as we build projects. That will fundamentally differentiate Tivan from pretty much any other of the 100 to 200 companies that pretend they're building projects in the critical minerals sector in Australia. So hold that thought in mind as we go forward. On the PE ratio, I do expect if we get through that Tivan will command an enormously high PE ratio, enormously high. Mining companies, tend to be maybe 10 to 30 times earnings, depending on what they are. Gold producers aren't valued very highly because gold's not very important. And you have outlying companies like Lynas that traded hundreds of times their earnings this year at certain moments because it became geopolitically significant. for a period of time, even if the company has a terrible track record in terms of profitability. So where we want Tivan to land is in terms of a stable earnings outlook, but a very high PE multiple. I think it's achievable because we are already demonstrating the strategic importance of the company. We're already demonstrating that we have a great management capability. And I believe as well, over time, the sheer weight of money in the sector and the paucity of well-managed companies in the sector will lead to Tivan commanding a really, really significant earnings multiple. So you can build your own little spreadsheets in terms of where you think that might go, but I do want to highlight this sort of framework because it avoids what's happening online at the moment, which is people trying to make simplistic assessments from NPVs to sum of parts type valuation. That's not where Tivan is anymore. We're heading towards earnings over the next couple of years. Those earnings will attract a multiple, which I think will be very, very significant. And uniquely, we're going to stabilise shares on issue and continue to build and finance our projects out using JVs. It's a very exciting outlook for a shareholder. And just to remind everyone, I am a shareholder. Finally, our partners, a quick thank you here as well to two. Let me start with our lawyers who've been with me pretty much all the way, but particularly this year, we've logged some enormous hours. So Michael Blackerson and Shay Kyriakidis at Gilbert Tobin, not here today, but do want to say thanks publicly to the amount of work that they've put in, particularly through weekends. The Japan deal, Q1 of this year, was extremely arduous, to say the least. And it's not just time, it's skill. He's an artist, and he's become a very important confidant as well. And the deal velocity that we have at Tivan, I think it will be sustained, but it's largely in part due to, I think, the chemistry that Michael and I have working together now. So with special thanks to Michael and to Shay. I also want to highlight Elaine Allen. She's here today. Make sure you say hi. Some people perhaps may not appreciate how important it is when you're turning around a company to have built beautiful images and to have great pitch decks and to inspire people to look at what you're trying to do. We're trying to capture the iconography of the Northern Territory here at Tivan. We're the only ASX-listed company headquartered in Darwin. That's an incredible privilege, and when you think about how important Outback Australia is to the national storyline as well. So we're in trusted hands with Elaine. All of these beautiful images owes to her. She often takes somewhat jumbled ideas out of my head and finds a way to put them in a way that you all see. So thank you very much, Elaine, for bearing with me for the past couple of years in that role. And finally, the team. Now, we could have done this chart. Maybe we did do this chart last year. I think it would have been 10, 12 people. Explosive growth. Growth can be difficult to manage, but we've done it in a very measured, very disciplined way. As always, I want to emphasise here that it's a very young team. I haven't got the average age, but my guess is that it's less than 35. And Timor's probably even dragged that down because Timor's such an incredibly young country. And so uniquely, I think Tivan it's a generationally different company. Some of the companies that are ahead of us that have done well, there are some companies that have done well. These are boomer companies. Don't take that the wrong way for anyone who's in the boomer generation as well. I'm Gen X. This company is actually a millennial company. It's an up-and-coming, generationally different company, different values, tremendous energy, great dedication. The drive that the team has illustrated this year, particularly at the Speewah Fluorite project and the interaction in building out the financial architecture of the firm on the run with Tammy's team, it's been breathtaking to oversee. And I use that word advisedly because I haven't had to overmanage at all, always try to delegate. In fact, huge amount of work, but it's down to, I think, the recognition that everyone has that we have a really well-defined purpose at the company, that it's a once-in-a-career opportunity for a lot of the people in the team that have joined who are values-aligned to really push on and achieve visible things. And also because I think everyone appreciates that if and when we succeed here, the benefits will go well beyond shareholder returns to uplifting communities. in places that matter to us. A lot of people involved in the company either grew up or are from the Northern Territory. Timor is an impoverished country that's just found its feet, and we have a practically historic opportunity up there to help nation build. So there's great joy, I think, working in the company at this moment in time. We're going to hear from the team in a bit, but I'm super proud of the contributions that have been made. Very grateful for the wise heads around the company as well. So this is a Guy, this is a Christine, Anthony, Stefan, Simon, so on and so forth. We've found a really great balance at the company, and it's a great privilege to lead it as I do. So that's essentially it from me today. Again, the overall observation, I think, is that we are 3 years in. I think it's been an incredible set of achievements that have put us at the point we have reached now, turning a company around. I don't measure our achievement through market cap at all. I think the right way to think about what we've achieved is the harmony in the team and the opportunities that we've created. And I leave you again today with that concept of an invitation to join us over the next 3 years as we stamp our authority on the different projects that we have underway and as we build this company of strategic importance across Northern Australia. Thank you. We've seen this year, particularly since, I think, Q2, this great focus on critical minerals and rare earths. It did emanate, I think, probably from the US and MP Materials deal. What's your assessment? You're involved in a lot of these debates in Canberra. How advanced are some of these policy initiatives? How serious is Canberra in terms of intervening with durable effect in the critical mineral sector?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is, I know there is a lot of appetite, and I think we will see the outcome of that appetite probably in the next few weeks, certainly this side of Christmas. The federal government is committed to providing some sort of strategic reserve, be it physical or virtual. I think we are well placed to provide both physical and virtual. And we're certainly very much involved, Tivan that is, both Grant, myself, Ellen, very much involved directly in those conversations with the federal government. So it's an opportunity for us. I think the other point, though, to note is, I mean, as Grant mentioned, to some extent we've been a bit ahead of this in terms of the involvement with Japan, who are, as Grant sort of alluded to, and have moved with, I would say, un-Japanese-like haste over the past year or so, and that is very much reflecting the strategic importance that Japan puts on this, which I think is, we've been well positioned to take advantage of that, both in what we've achieved so far and what we have in front of us. And I think I'm very comforted in the fact that we have a very reliable partner in Japan. So they've moved very fast by Japanese standards, but they have nevertheless maintained that integrity and that durability of the relationship, and I think that sets us up well for the future. So we've already got, as Grant highlighted, the Japanese government direct involvement through JOGMEC's involvement in the fluoride JV at Speewah. But we do have that opportunity with Australia, but I think we come from a position, Tivan comes from a position of being able to work out how exactly we want to participate in that, given we already have that involvement from Japan. But the appetite is very much there at the federal level. I mean, the PM announced at the time of the election, at least $1 billion for a critical minerals fund or strategic reserve or fund. I've been involved in a couple of proposals around a fund, which is at least that number, but possibly, at least double that. So there is, I think we'll see the outcome of those deliberations, hopefully with some detail around it this side of Christmas, and then certainly in the lead up to the budget next year. So I think we are now getting to the crunchy point where the sort of high-level statements are going to be turned into sort of dollars on the ground or in the ground. And we, as I said, Tivan very much participating directly in those discussions, and we're in a very well positioned to take advantage of it. And in part because, as Grant highlighted earlier, we've got something real to actually show them and say, this is what this actually looks like. And, you know, with fluorite and speewire, these are the challenges we have to confront, but this is actually what we're dealing with. So it's not a conceptual thing, it's an actual thing, which makes those discussions, it puts us in a much better place to have those direct discussions with the government.
Okay. Thanks, Guy. And I mean, Christine, you and I met with, I think I can say it was a DFAT, Treasury, on the sides of IMARC to discuss a lot of these policies as well. So I know that you're in these discussions. However, if I could, in the interest of time, drag you to a different topic, which is, I know, close to your heart, Timor-Leste. So you joined us up on country in March when we had that incredible community event in the mountains. You've seen our progress since. You've seen how we've now been anointed in a way to take over this extra ground with Bakau and Osu, and the tremendous responsibility I think that's involved in that. So how do you feel at the end of this year with Timor, and I think the responsibility and the opportunity that we have up there?
Well, both in measure, really. If I think back to you contacting me and saying, are you chairing a session at IMARC with the head of the mines department from Timor-Leste and the minister? And it's like, well, yes, I am. And Fusi had already kind of been talking about it. And I often reflect that serendipity can play a part in the opportunities, but it's the speed in being able to action that really makes a difference. And so I think of that at the end of October, you know, and then in December you were in Dili with Steve. And that we were really having a conversation with a country, it's a very young country, you know, 20 plus years old, looking to build a mining industry from nothing. I think the mining legislation is about 3 years old. So this isn't just an opportunity at a commercial level or an economic opportunity in terms of, you know, for Tivan and to build Timor-Leste, but actually to help grow a mining industry that really does contribute. And given the challenges the industry's had around the world, including the World Bank at one point wondering whether they should continue to support mining projects because they often left countries impoverished, this is a really interesting opportunity to say a lot of the things we do will set the standard. And like for me emotionally, I was in Darwin when Timor was invaded. I was very involved, met Ramos Horta when we were very young, much younger. And, you know, really when Grant and I were sort of first talking about it, needed to put that emotional, God, it'd be so good to do something, right, positive, and given Australia's history around oil and other things. I think when we were up at Turiskai, you know, in a tiny community where there was just people as far as the eye could see, like people had travelled to come to this. There were 4 or 5 ministers in addition to Zanana Guzmao. And the weight of responsibility as well as opportunity, like it was palpable. People want us to succeed, right? This is a country that can see the end of the oil money. Mining is one of the economic sectors that they see. They are curating who they want to come in. So they're choosing who they want to explore, not just doing what we do in Australia, like if you've got the money and you get in first. So I think it is incredibly prospective, and it will have its challenges. This is very remote. But, you know, we drove all the way up there seeing power lines. And I remember saying to the head of because we were talking power, because I'm on the board of Territory Generation, about electricity generation. And I was saying there are power lines, you know, up to Turiskai. And he said we have power to 95% of the population of Timor-Leste. And I can tell you, having worked in developing countries all around the world, it is really unusual for things like oil money to end up being kind of really being reflected in infrastructure for the community. So I am both excited but also, as with Speewar and other things, this is really a time for us to consolidate, to make sure that we can deliver. It's really exciting, and we've got a fantastic young team on the ground. You know, really, Francesco, who's our in-country manager, who actually contacted us, like out of the blue, through LinkedIn, kind of going, I'd like to talk to you. And a lot of that was the same due diligence around technical capability, was as much about who are we? What sort of people are we? What sort of values do we have? So yeah, I mean, I'm very hot on Timor-Leste, but I also keep reminding myself, don't count the chickens, right? Yeah. Before we get there.
So Anthony, reflecting on the journey that we've been on for 3 years, we started the 249 together, and then we went through this valley where we were struggling to have any traction. We found our anchor with the fluorite, and now we have this almost proliferation of opportunities, early stage projects. Perhaps you could share, I think, with the audience here today, your observations on, I guess, the discipline and the capital efficiency that's been required to get us through. And I guess the ability that we have, I think, to manage so many things at once, even though there are different phases and so on and so forth. I strongly favour this portfolio balance effect where you have these low probability group of opportunities whilst you still have a core mission. You've seen it, you've watched us execute this up close. How do you think it's working out? And your overall sort of perspective on what you've seen.
Thanks, Grant, and thanks everybody who's here. At this point, I'd like to acknowledge the people who were here last year. We came out to this venue last year. I came over from Perth for the session last year. We had I think most of the seats. We had a good turnout. We had a great turnout for an Australian AGM, but we had a lot of seats available. And this year we don't have any seats available. And I was reflecting last night, visiting my family in Melbourne, that we came in last year. We were very welcomed. We had extraordinary engagement with the shareholders last year, and we're sitting at a share price, if I look back, I think we're like 5.2 cents. And here we are sitting here today with a secure future. We're sitting here today with a share price in the 20 cent range. We're sitting here with a room that's absolutely full of people, and it's fantastic to have been on the journey over the 3 years now. Last year it was an exciting challenge, and this year it's a pleasure to be on the journey. In terms of what has been done in those 3 years, I think Grant has laid out that there wasn't much here when we got here. And everything that we have today has been created in the new Tivan. And talking to the people from the organisation today, they already talk about there are two, for people who've been there for about 8 years, there are definitely two different companies that they've worked for, and one of those is the new company since the 249D. And then other people have spoken about the fact that this year is a new chapter compared to last year as well in terms of what's being done. Now, may I ask, how many people here are from Western Australia? So, if I can comment then for people who aren't from Western Australia, thank you very much for your investments into a company that's listed in Western Australia. I live in Western Australia. I grew up in Melbourne. In terms of progress, I sail on a boat in WA. One of the other guys on the boat runs a mining company. The guy who lives up the road runs a mining company. Another guy who's on the boat used to work for a vanadium company. And then when the vanadium price disappeared, he got sick of going to work at the vanadium company where all he did every day was wait for the vanadium price to improve because he knew they weren't going to do anything until the vanadium price did improve. So to get to your question, Grant, in terms of capital efficiency, Tivan is a company that is run to take what it has at its disposal in order to generate a return for the investors and to create a return for the community and the stakeholders. And what has been... I worked as a consultant. I've worked at 20 or 30 or 40 different companies in the time of my career. And what I've seen in terms of the progress for Tivan is beyond peer in the experience that I've had in my career. And I'm conscious of not trying to throw people other companies under the bus and talk badly about other companies. But if you look at what Tivan's doing and you look at how carefully Tivan is executing with the resources that you're providing for the business, then I think you can see a business that is doing everything it can to ensure a return for you. And I think that's the sort of business that certainly I want my resources tied up in.
Thanks, Anthony. And so on that note, we did have opportunities this year as the tide started to turn, and I think we'll have opportunities in the future where the financial constraint around the company is no longer as tight, to make decisions which are more liberal, shall I say. And there was one dalliance I had mid-year where Guy effectively intervened and talked me off a fence. It involved a diamond mine in the NT, and the romantic side of the journey overcame me a little bit. I did find my senses before we made any decisions, but Guy was certainly reminding me of the importance of staying in our lane. Now, our lane is very big. Tivan's lane is big. We've said critical minerals, we've said Northern Australia, we've defined Timor to become part of Northern Australia. I know Guy's from South Australia. I don't know if South Australia will become part of North Australia at some point, Guy, but the importance of staying in our lane, Guy, would be the question.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. But I think one thing maybe we didn't quite emphasise, or we could have picked up in your presentation, was the synergy between what we've got at Speewah, what we've got at Sandover, and what we've got at Timor, and it's very complementary. And the team, particularly the Geos team, and some of them are here today not looking like Geos because they confuse me because they're not in their normal kit. But so I've decided I had to wear that instead. But really, they can move, and they are moving. We're moving the rigs are in process from moving from Speewah down to Sandover, and so we can roll one campaign into the other, and the weather helps that timing as well. And then some of the teams heading up to Timor after that to close out what has been a very, very busy year for the team. But they just emphasise that skill set is able to seamlessly move from one project to another, and is actually, sorry, I say seamlessly, they're the ones who have to do the travel, but they are able to move from one to another and just transfer that skill set across a bunch of projects which have a whole degree of complementarity to them, which I think is another important aspect of sort of diversification, of having those different options on the table in front of us at the moment. And as you said, the lane is wide, but it's still roughly the same stroke that we're swimming in that lane, and it really utilises the skill set of the fantastic team that we've pulled together.
Yeah, I think that's right. And so, Christine, I know, again, just to pivot a little bit, there was an important conference in Darwin about a month ago, 2 months ago. I know I was... Was it 2 weeks ago? Yeah. Time flies. Perhaps you can introduce it, but I know you have Lineage there. I know Tivan sponsored it. I know it goes to core capabilities in terms of what we're building at Speewah, where a number of our key contractors will be Indigenous contractors. A shout out to MDM Mining today. They've done an incredible job for us, and I'm sure are going to be instrumental as we head towards construction at Speewah. Perhaps you can introduce this conference, Christine, because I know that you found the event to be quite moving, and you're very glad that Tivan played such a prominent role.
Absolutely. I mean, well, this was a journey for the Aboriginal enterprise in mining, energy and exploration, which is an industry association or a business association for Aboriginal businesses across mining, energy and exploration. And for me, a 20-year journey, because we started in Alice Springs in 2005 as a result of a number of people in the industry, a really small number actually, and a number of senior Aboriginal leaders who kind of thought there has to be more than thinking that pre-vocational training and getting jobs is the economic sharing of the industry, and was really interested in growing a commercial sector. And for me personally, kind of being on the stage with Marcia Langton and we were a panel of the people that were there at the start, looking at businesses that had turned up 20 years ago with one grader or one truck or an idea or a drill rig, that are now running multi-million-dollar businesses and are mentoring. In fact, half the sponsors of that conference now are Aboriginal people, Aboriginal companies. And Tivan, like that was a big decision for me to actually, in a sense, to go, I want to go as Tivan, right? I actually want, I mean, that's a lot of trust actually, and a lot of pride in the fact that I think we are really looking to do something different, to truly share benefit. And, you know, all the mining companies really often genuinely want to struggle with how you do it. And so I do find Amy really uplifting, and Maddie came from the Darwin office, and I'd encourage anyone that has an opportunity, it moves around Australia, to really have a very different view of what Aboriginal business looks like. For example, the largest hot refuelling helicopter port in the southern hemisphere is run at a place called Jarrabin, 200 kilometres north of Broome, owned and 100% run by the Aboriginal community, right? Servicing the oil and gas, the huge helicopters that are going in and out. It'll blow your mind. It was a great place for Tivan. People were very keen to talk to us about really how we saw this economic and joint wealth creation looking, and I think we'll be creating new pathways and new structures in doing it. So, yeah, it was great.
Thanks, Christine. And so, Anthony, in the interest of time, could you help us segue to Graham Tuckwell from ETFS Capital? You saw that relationship take place through the course of this year, how Graham helped us navigate not just the placement market, but most importantly, the joint venture structure, coming in as a preferred partner, bumping aside a big hedge fund that I was going to work with offshore. The idea that we now have Australian family office, durably aligned, super sophisticated financing partner at Speewah, potentially in Central Australia at some point. Graham's about to make some words, introduce himself, Louise, and ETFS Capital in terms of their rationale for stepping in and playing such an instrumental role at Tivan. But perhaps you can explain for everyone the importance of that relationship as it unfolded through the course of this year. Thanks.
Thanks, Grant. I'll try to do that justice. Obviously, during the first couple of years after we came in, there were difficult times around financing the organisation, and what you always hope to be able to get is a trusted partner in what we're doing. And I remember the first phone call that I got from Grant after he'd spoken with Graham, and this opportunity started to emerge, and what were my feelings on this, and what I expressed at that time was, if we can get ourselves a partner who has the wherewithal to be able to partner with us all the way through this journey, and that is a partner with integrity, then that person becomes the preferred partner to work with going forward. I can sit here now and say, that emerged at the same time as we were building out the incorporated joint venture with Sumitomo, and I have to say, in terms of what we're doing, what we have with the Japanese when we talked about this afternoon when we were just getting together as part of the company, that they act with so much integrity and so much desire to do the right thing, and they have been true to their word all of the way through that journey. And now we have a local Australian financing partner with massive wherewithal and the same integrity and the same desire to pursue an unquestionably good outcome, and it's just I'm lost for words in describing how good it is to be in that situation.
I think you did pretty well. Thank you. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Graham Tuckwell up to the stage. I think we can stay here for a little bit, and because we're going to do a formal old school signing ceremony to mark this moment. But first of all, we wanted to hear from Graham. Thank you.
Will you thank me after I finish speaking? So I'm a boomer, so I've got to use notes. Our scholarship byline, we're a philanthropist, but this is not one of our philanthropic efforts, is no ordinary scholarship. From our perspective, we are no ordinary investor. I don't think there's a single family office that's invested in a project in this way. But let me explain, give you perhaps a little bit of background for those of you who are interested. I was responsible for launching the world's first gold ETF, which is why the gold premiums are very low, because that act caused all gold companies to halve or more than halve in value. So I launched the gold ETF and it went global. I was asked by the World Gold Council to do the same in London. And off the back of that, I decided to launch other commodities such as oil in conjunction with Shell. And within 6 years, and that was a company called ETF Securities. And we had an Australian operation, but really all the action was overseas. So for about 15 years, we went overseas and built, within 6 years, a company that had $37 billion US under management. It was the 7th largest at the time ETF company in the world, and it was valued at about $1.5 billion. I kept that for a while. I then sold it, the operations. I kept Australia for a little while, sold all the overseas operations, bought back the minority shareholders that had come in, and then we renamed the company ETFS Capital, because we now had a mission of investing in private equity and, of course, ETFs, because that's what our business was. Hence the name ETFS Capital, which is owned jointly by me and my wife. And we're the only owners and only directors. So that's who you're dealing with. No outside money, nobody to tell us how we should be doing. If we want to do something and if we believe in a vision, that's it from us. That's what we'll do. And then you'd say, well, how did you get in? If you're an ETF guy, because I've been doing that for 20 odd years, how did you know anything about mining? Well, the answer is I started in investment banking, but soon got involved in transactions in the mining industry. And after a number of years, I in fact started my own company that specialised in corporate finance and technical advice wrapped up into one. In fact, it was a company called Investor Resources Limited, and I was privileged to have Newcrest's number 2, a gentleman called Courtney Chamberlain, and I had a couple of geologists working for us. So when we went and did some business, I obviously led the financing side, these guys led the technical side, so I learned a hell of a lot about geology, metallurgy, construction of mines, etc., etc. But that was a space I sort of left and thought I would never ever go back to again, in the same way when I left ANU I'd never thought I'd go back again. But that's a different story. So how did this work? I've got a CFO, I've got a CFO here too, but CIO Craig Danduran, and he's our Chief Investment Officer, brought out by the Future Fund because of his expertise to help Australia run its Future Fund. And we're looking at private equity. That's all we're doing. And I said to Craig, the only listed equities I'm going to buy are ETFs, obviously. Well, one day he said to me, Graham, look, there's a company I've bought shares in and I'd like perhaps you to buy some shares in it. And I thought, hang on, isn't this a conflict of interest? He's just wanting me to buy. And he said, no, you've got to meet this guy. He's interesting. And that was Graham. He is interesting, as we know. So he came to our office. I'm sitting there with my wife on the couch. Craig's there too, and the three of us with Graham. So he talks about, oh, Graham, I'm thinking of doing a placement and you might want to buy some. And I'm thinking, no, I don't want to buy any shares. I've told Craig this. I'm only taking this meeting out of politeness. And he talks on, and he said, by the way, I started to think, I'm going to finish this meeting soon. And then he started to tell me, oh, and by the way, I'm building a company where I've got dealing with a major corporation, and basically this is an individual at this stage, really. I mean, Tivan wasn't much other than Grant at this stage, with all due respect. He'd locked up a deal with one of the biggest companies in the world, and not only that, he had presented to me that if he got this hedge fund over the line, he was fully financed. There is no such thing I've ever seen where a small mining company in Australia has ever fully financed a project, in principle, before feasibility study. I've never seen it. And I thought, this guy's clever. This is really interesting. So after 20 minutes, I just sat there and said nothing. And I think the three of you will remember that. And they didn't, and Lou and Craig didn't know whether I was going to ask Grant to leave or whatever. And I said, Grant, I'm not interested in buying equity in your company. I'd actually like to buy into the project. It was a $50-odd million ticket at that stage. And Grant turned around to me and said, I wasn't expecting that. And I said to him, nor was I. And that's how it happened. Because for me, us, this is sort of like a private equity business. You've got relationships, you buy into it, you provide the capital, you provide the help you need, and then the money comes back. So yes, we did buy some shares in the company. Grant encouraged us to have the alignment. But to me, it was the picture that Grant was painting. And I've been used to sort of share brokers and all sorts of people spruiking stuff. But people who run mining companies in Australia at the small end are not the quality of Grant is. He is one of the smartest guys I've ever met. In fact, Bill Evans, who's here, who's chief economist of Westpac, he said he used to go over to Wall Street, talk to the Wall Street guys, and he said, oh, this guy Grant Wilson you've been talking to, he is one of the smartest guys I've ever met. Well, that's a compliment. So this is a guy who can take on Wall Street titans, but actually be a nice person, and then come from a background of Alice, and then create something from nothing, which is what's actually happened here. This company was worth basically nothing except the value of its listing a couple of years ago, as I understand it, with enormous vision. And it's not just about the projects, it's how the world looks in 10 years' time or 20 years' time, and how all these government policies fall into place. And with that, he's not only able to convince some big companies to deal with him, he's actually able to get a great team around him. And that's a highly unusual skill set. But most of all, he really cares. He really cares deeply, not just about the different projects going on. He cares about the people, he cares about the community, he cares about a legacy. It's not about money for Grant. It's actually a bigger thing. He cares about many more things. And that's why we trust him. That's why Lou and I trust him. And that's why we put our money in. And the model we've got is you don't need to go to the market for an equity raising to fund a company. You can simply bring in some joint venture partners who have got the capital. We've got the capital. And I'd like to see more of this. So suddenly Tivan has got into the Speewah project with virtually no capital into it, certainly no construction capital, a little bit of... I've never seen that done before. That's a clever model. And frankly, I'm happy to support it going forward. So we're not just here to be invested in Speewah. We're here to be invested in the other projects in a similar way, subject to the board's approval, I will buy many drinks tonight if that's what's needed. And hopefully, as shareholders, you will never see another capital raising. Darling, you're signing. Yes, which you did. Mm-hmm.
I'm almost certain the ASX is not going to sanction me because I didn't say any of that. Thank you, Graham. It's very kind. Now, we're going to do this old school signing ceremony. Great pleasure to invite Louise Tuckwell to the stage. I've got to know Louise as well. It's been a great privilege. So our board and Graham and Louise are going to countersign some documents that were actually signed on the weekend for symbolic purposes. And for Graham's, the word that he used, which is very important to everything that we're doing here, legacy, for legacy. Thank you. I'll go first.
Right. So the last time we did this is when we got married. These are the ones we want people. Is there another one?
It's what you might call a proof of concept. Okay, so I think with that we're going to pivot, hard pivot to the team. So if I could invite a bunch of the team up. I promised our team that shareholders don't bite, and so we're going to prove that now as well. So Steve, Fussy, I think Maddie, Jeremy, if I could trouble you, Jace, of course, Tammy, let's do it. So as I said, this is just an opportunity to pass the mic around. We have others here today. George, you want to come up? I'm going to give Johannes a pass. He just landed, I think it was like 2 weeks ago. So, but yeah, just an opportunity, I think, for 10 minutes to hear from the team. I'm going to clam up here, pass the mic around on impressions of working at Tivan. I think the differences that are embodied here, some of the opportunities that are ahead. Feel free, guys, to talk about that. Again, mindful of ASX rules when we're talking about things that are not yet public. But maybe passing to Jace, I think first. Jason's our CCO. He was there in the day, the dark days of TNG, the campaign that got rid of them all, the clean-up job that took place for a year, and now this period of resurgence and the opportunities we have ahead. So perhaps Jace, and then we just hand it around, I think.
Thanks, Grant. Yeah, I guess in terms of what makes Tivan different, I've worked at a number of different companies over the years. Some have very low productivity, some pretty good, but I guess the differentiator for Tivan is the hyper productivity that the team delivers. When we put the quarterly reports together, each quarter you look back and you think, geez, we've done a lot this quarter, and then the next quarter comes along and you put that report together and you see the same thing again. So I think that's driven by the young team that we've got. Like Grant said, the average age is probably 35, which is making me feel pretty old these days, really. But no, they're a great, energetic team. And I also think that culture is driven from Grant and the board down as well. I guess when you do a 249D and you take over a company, there's an expectation that you're going to get in there and deliver. So I think that work ethic really stems from Grant, the way he gets around things, and just the output's really significant. In terms of what I'm looking forward to in the next couple of years, obviously you've got the Speewah Fluorite project, our flagship project, which would be great to get that into development and be self-sustaining from a cash flow point of view. But I'm really excited about some of the exploration prospects we've got as well. I started my career 25 years ago in corporate advisory. Used to do IPOs and ASX listings for small cap greenfields exploration companies. So that's been my background, and we've got a couple of really exciting prospects there, like Grant spoke about with Timor, the copper gold targets we've got there. Surface sampling, early days, but it's in elephant country. There's lots of big copper gold deposits in that region, so that's really exciting. And the other one that's piqued my interest recently has been Walshy's Well, named after the man sitting next to me. It's a really, really exciting prospect there as well, a 1 kilometre outcrop in Gossan. It's got all the geochemistry that you'd hope to see. Again, only rock chip samples, but we'll get in there and hopefully do some aeromag and get some good drilling targets out of that. So that's two things that give us really a lot of upside. Like Grant said, some of that exploration upside is quite uncapped. So really looking forward to seeing how they play out in the next couple of years. Steve.
Thanks, Jace. Yeah, super exciting. Yeah, as Jason mentioned, there's a lot going on, and yeah, the wall is quite exciting as well. I was saying earlier that having a target like that, if you're a junior explorer, that would be your focal point of the entire company. And for us, it's just icing on the cake, which is great. Yeah, Timor's awesome, very exciting up there. So early stages, lots of good results going on. And yeah, Sandover and Molly Hill is one of the most exciting things. I think for me at the moment, as a geo, there's a lot going on out there. We're only just starting to scratch the surface, really, what we've done. And yeah, it's a great journey, so it's very exciting.
I guess probably what makes Tivan different, I guess, it's been a pretty interesting ride. I started in January, so every month has been different. There's been a lot going on. I've also had the autonomy to put things in place that I needed to, and that's been really good for me. That's always exciting. I guess what I'm looking forward to in the next few years is Speewah coming to fruition. We did a lot of work on that this year, and it's really good to see how that's kind of playing out. And also I'd love to see us get to that exciting stage of revenue. It's a huge achievement to have a project from start and then actually see it reach fruition. So that's probably the one for me. And then also, I guess you've got the exciting other prospects that we have in Timor and Molly Hill, Sandover going on as well. So there's a lot of interesting things to kind of keep us all busy. Maddie?
Thanks, Tammy. I have loved my year at Tivan, so I've been also at Tivan since January. I started the same day as Tammy. What is so unique being a part of this team is that we move fast, as you know, but carefully and with a care. So as many people have said today, Grant's done a great job building out this team. The team that we work with day in and day out genuinely care, not just about results, but about the communities that we're working in, about our stakeholders, and about doing things properly. So you might see us moving fast and making rapid decisions, but there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to make sure that they're well executed.
Thanks, Maddie. Yeah, I've been here 6 months, and I just, like Maddie, just the pace of everything, it's amazing. It's really every day, and it's like how much can you put in. It's just trying to bring the young energy to the team, and it's just really great to see that everyone else is doing the same thing. And from a geological perspective, it's just jumping from project to project, and as a geologist, it's all we could ever ask for. Looking at heaps of rocks, and I'm a simple guy. So, yeah, and it's just, heaps of good career development, and, the team's amazing, and it's just, onwards and upwards.
Thanks, mate. I'm Jeremy Simpson. I got brought in early in the year after meeting a very interesting man who sold me on a vision of a new company. Now, these guys are all rocks and finance. I'm HSEC, okay? Added a few extra letters into the title. And quite honestly, the last 6 months, it was straight out in the field, getting more heavily involved in environment and community than I've ever been before. Loving it. Absolutely the best experience so far. Excited to take that responsibility to make that move forward. First through the Kimberleys, then out to Alice, and onwards and upwards to Timor, and from there, who knows. So it has been a very steep curve for me this year, one I've loved, and hoping to keep that moving with the energy that the younger team, I am one of the ones that pushes the age curve upwards a little, but feed off the young energy around me like a good old mining vampire and keep things moving. Over to you, Fussy.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'm Fussy. It's pretty amazing to be here and sort of reflect on the 12 months. Seeing the new 4 projects that we've put on the books this year is amazing. And they're not the focus. The focus has been Speewah. It's always been Speewah. And the amount of work we've done there this year has been phenomenal as well. So 4 new projects, plus keeping the focus on our priority and advancing that one as fast as we humanly can. And then there's the ones you don't hear about, the moonshots that we like to call it. I love about Tivan is nothing is off the table. You have an idea, you raise it, we run it to ground, and that kind of creative thinking is encouraged. It's not stifled, it's not seen as distracting from the projects, it's encouraged because as geologists, that's how we can add value to the business, where we see opportunities that others don't see, such as Sandover Fluorite, such as Molly Hill, these stalled projects that are just sitting there. If we can investigate them, see the value, raise it with the team, we peer review it, some of them stack up and they progress as projects, others put a line through and we move on. But we learn from these moonshots, and it's also how we're going to fill the project pipeline going forward. So 2026 is already looking very busy. I can't imagine what we're going to do for 2027, but it's going to be even busier.
Thank you. And yeah, Fussi's right. One of the many maxims I hold dear is that step changes can be driven by creative thinking. And so I like the way Fussi characterised the informational environment and decision-making environment at Tivan. Nothing is stifled. Absolutely. Always looking for those new sources of inspiration and value. Just a couple of apologies as well. Some of our other superstars, Brendan Nicol, everyone would have heard me talk about Brendan before and the job that he's done along with Alex in our processing team, minerals processing and metallurgy. Absolutely critical skill set, done an incredible job. Lynn Ladd, who's in Darwin and Chief Development Officer, has done a fantastic job. Huge amount of work now with government pressing in the door, in every direction. Governments, if you think about where we are, very close relationships, working relationships day in, day out now with 3 different governments, Japan, Australia and Timor-Leste, so that's a very big role. And Michael Christ, Michael is a heartbeat, he's just an incredible guy. The amount of work that he's got through over 3 years is, even for me, it's shocking. And so shout out to Mike. One of the features of running the company with a very young team is that Tivan's popping out a lot of babies. And so all those people, they do have very good reasons for not being here. So it's a joy to be around that sort of vitality. So thanks, everyone. In the interest of time, I think we've got to keep moving. If I can invite the board back up, and we're going to take questions from the floor. All right. Where's Larry? Come on, Larry. You got to kick this off, mate. So we've got 15 minutes or so for this, but to be frank, I've always viewed engagement with shareholders, everyone knows, is absolutely pivotal. It's your company, you own it. So any question we'll answer. And Larry, do you want to kick things off? Do you want to kick things off with a question? Questions are infectious. Once someone starts, I'm sure other people will follow.
Anyway, actually it's not to the board, although they're fantastic and what Grant's done. I've been a shareholder for about, 13 or 14 years. I can't refer to the previous company. I just can't get the words out of my mouth. But it's been absolutely fantastic. I'm from New Zealand. Oh, sorry, can you hear better? I'm from New Zealand, and over the last 3 years I've introduced quite a lot of New Zealanders to come onto the register. And last year, when we were sort of hovering around that 5 or 6 cents, all I got every time I was at the golf club is, "Oh, Larry, who the hell are you? What did you put us into?" I said, "Sit back, just wait. We've got a fantastic company, a fantastic board. Have a look at the company, and it'll turn around." Well, now, of course, I'm the greatest investment advisor they've ever come across. Anyway, I won't take any more time, but just my question actually is to Stephen. Can I ask Stephen a question? Not being a geologist, I just wonder, I can understand with Sandover and with Speewah that it's all, flat and open. But when we've got 340 odd square kilometres at Turiskai, how on earth are you able to, with that, find areas to deposit? Come on.
Sorry, so yeah, in terms of finding deposits in Turiskai with the challenging terrain, is sort of where you're the main question. Yeah. So that's been a big factor of the team over there. We've got an amazing team, and the amount of ground they've covered over there is incredible. You might have seen the map that was shared earlier. So that team, they're on a 8 and 6 roster over there. They're continuously covering ground. They're doing fly camping, so they're camping out for days at a time, and they're hiking up mountains, up river streams. It's incredible. And that way we're just able to cover everything initially with a baseline. Pardon me. And once that baseline is done with all the initial sampling, then we'll move on to geophysical to try and define drill targets. But we're going through that, baselining phase, and so we'll get there. It's a challenge with the terrain, but we've got it under control.
All right. Any other questions? I'm sure there's questions. Where's Bruno? Here comes the mic.
Thanks, Grant and Board, and also to the Tuckwells. That was a great, I think, comprehensive. She laid out the law for Grant and his perspective on life. I think that resonates with all of us that have been in the company for a long time. So it's a credit to you, and we're really happy to have you on board, and to Grant and the Board. It's amazing. So that's a statement. A little bit, I think, to Guy, just really trying to understand a little bit more around the strategic reserve and what that does mean for this company. I suppose, conceptually understand it, but potentially what that could mean, and perhaps how far away are we from knowing what might constitute critical minerals for that purpose as well?
My expectation is that we will know something more before the end of this year. I think almost certainly. I'd say there'd be something. The mid-year economic forecast outlook at MyEFO comes out in December, and I'm pretty sure there'll be some more information around that. I hope it's most of the information, but knowing how Canberra works, maybe it's not quite that, but I'd say a fair chunk of that. I think, as I alluded to earlier, I think there's a couple of propositions. One is actually a physical reserve, and I think one of the key elements is probably going to be some sort of floor price, but also potentially something where it's but also more of an investment fund look at it as well. Certainly one of the proposals I'm involved in, that is very much, which is a joint proposition along with Macquarie Bank, which is both public-private fund, where it's all about providing some certainty around offtake, particularly in terms of price and price discovery, and a price which is real price, rather than one which is subject to, I don't want to say manipulation, but let's say a fair amount of force from so it's determined more as much from the supply side rather than just from the demand side, where someone can sit on the price whenever they feel so inclined. And so I think we will see more information around that. That's very much the proposal that the PM put on the table, whatever it was, a year or so ago now. But Bruno, my strong expectation is we will know more, hopefully nearly everything by the end of this year, but if not, I'd say not too far into next year. But as I said, there's at least $1 billion being committed across the sector. In terms of the government's got its critical minerals list out there, and all of the stuff we've got is on it, most obviously fluorite. So, I'd say there is a great prospectivity, to use that word, for a Tivan there.
Questions? If you just raise your hand, we'll get the mic to you.
Hi, thanks. Thank you so much for everything. It's been fantastic what you all realized. Absolutely amazing. My question is just about I think you mentioned once before, Grant, about realization on this side of 2030s of the I think that you mentioned, like, we probably can realize 2 projects. Is that still right, or any views on that?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm not sure which investor briefing I said that on, and many of you will know as well, I did this sort of, I guess it's like a podcast. It was a investor chat room in the US that somehow ended up on Hot Copper, went totally viral, and everyone ended up quite liking that interview, even though it wasn't meant to be public. Maybe I said it during that my expectation was that we'd have 2 projects up before 2030. Listen, I think it's definitely possible. That's certainly the aim at Speewah. We're choosing our battles very carefully. That is to say that when we're looking at the projects that are ahead, we're not interested in those projects that have got really deep technical challenges or that may require multiple billions of dollars of financing, or that might involve really complicated waste streams, for example, or that might be in really challenging environmental areas or cultural areas. So we're deliberately filtering to find projects that we believe we can take from picking them up to an FID within 3 years, and then you've got a couple of years to build it. Anything outside of 5 years, frankly, I'm not interested in. Now, you'd be surprised if you filter along those lines, what it drops out. It's not what people think. And of course, tungsten works, particularly when it's situated right next door to a massive fluorite deposit. And we have Speewah as well. There are other prospects floating around, and there are other exploration initiatives that we're interested in. There are some other critical minerals that we're interested in. We bought or acquired or pushed through 4 new initiatives this past 12 months. So I think shareholders should have an expectation there'll be more ahead. Like, we're not necessarily done here. And so we'll see where that goes. In terms of delivering 2 things at once, Anthony can comment here, but there's definitely risks and challenges in doing that. It's really important to have a clear sequence. As I said, I think Speewah will be the proving ground. My expectation is that it'll be Molly Hill that'll be next. I'm very confident that we can bring together an appropriate joint finance structure. Graham's alluded to that. There are other stakeholders and very important groups interested in Molly Hill, even beyond Japan, and that's something that I hope to be able to publicise in the first 3 months of next year. But then we have that technical challenge of actually building and delivering it. And we have to be so focused on proving that at Speewah. That's why Stefan LeBlanc's here. Stefan is renowned as one of the most prominent and successful project delivery engineers on the planet. I asked BHP 3 years ago, who's the best guy on the planet? They said Stefan. And we got to know each other, and Stefan's travelled all the way from Montreal to be here today, and we're going up to Central Australia on Saturday and then to Speewah. So we'll be tested at Speewah. If we deliver there, I'm confident that we'll be able to deliver at Molly Hill. I think that those things can happen inside of 2030. There's other reasons why we want to push that fast as well, and those reasons are in Japan, and there'll be something I can talk about more next year, I think. But over to Anthony here, because I know Anthony, being an engineer as well, will be encouraging us to stay really focused on the prize and then parlaying that into the next.
Yeah, so I worked in capital efficiency, I worked in business improvement, I worked in strategic initiatives, and as in our role as the board, of our governance role of making sure that Tivan's got the greatest chance of success, then we apply those same kinds of approaches to what we're doing. Now, when you have the opportunity to take on a new project, then you take on projects that deliver high value and they're relatively simple. And so we will prioritise the simple high value projects. I was talking before we came out here this afternoon about the complexity of the Tivan flow sheet, and you can contrast that with the simplicity of the Speewah flow sheet. And so what we have there is we have a very high value, relatively very simple process where we can deliver value.
Tivan, you mean the Tivan technology?
The Tivan technology, not the great company that is Tivan. That was a very, very complex flow sheet, and that was very, very challenging for for anybody to take on. And what we have here is something that's very simple, it's very high value, and then you have a sequence of projects after that that allows you to take advantage of the capabilities that you've already built around exploration, around delivery, around financing, around having your own money and delivering from there. And we will keep things very simple. I'll throw to Christine.
I just wanted to add a view about, how fast you can get a project up. Because, people talk about 15 to 17 years to go from greenfields discovery to an operation. But when you talk to regulators, companies are often creating their own fate. And I've been involved in projects globally. I've been involved in projects with, very large companies. And you de-risk them by the quality of, your early data, understanding that right from the beginning you're actually focused on getting a project up. And that includes when our people are in the field, but also the relationships. Like a lot of the hold-ups are not necessarily about the mine planning. I did a whole bunch of work with Woodside at one side because at one stage they'd done brilliant engineering work, but not really thought about where they were plonking it on the ground, which had major cultural issues. So I think, for us having discipline around understanding the points of risk, and understanding it in place, I truly believe you can shorten those, both permitting and delivery times, much faster than the industry talks about it. I mean, as an industry, we talk about it to beat up regulators, really. But there's, in that kind of 15 to 17 years, there are people that are moving faster. They're not that common, but it's possible.
Bill? You got a microphone coming your way, Bill.
Yep.
I'm not a mining guy, but I'd be interested in, as the market stands at this moment, what's the marginal cost of extraction of fluorite relative to the market price?
So we're working on a baseline of 50% profit margin and with upside risks to that. One of the great features that will ultimately be embedded in a successful project or projects is that our shareholders will be permanently long the call option of disruption in fluorite. If and when China puts up export restrictions and we're in production, the fluorite price is practically unbounded to the top side. So we're trying to get to production. Our Japanese partners, and a small shout out here, it's been such a privilege working with Sumitomo all year. The work that they do with the Japanese government is almost replicates all of the work that we do with the Australian government. And one of the key sort of concepts that they've brought to the table, which goes to the strategic reserve as well, is this concept of project stabilisation. So when you talk to Japan, they've got this lived experience of the first couple of years of a project being extraordinarily challenging, like Linus is an example of that. And so when they see floor prices and they see warehouses and they see government intervention, they're not necessarily that focused on Australian government trying to subsidise a project. They're really interested in Australian government trying to stabilise that project for the first couple of years, because once you're through and you're in production, you've de-risked it, you've got all of your logistics and modalities down, then the mine does practically run itself. So to answer your question, Bill, we believe the underlying fundamental of the project, even with the visibility we now have as we approach feasibility study, are really, really robust. One of the most, I think probably the most intrinsically profitable critical minerals project in Australia, with that long-term optionality to the top side. But I believe as well that the risk-adjusted component of the return stream that we're working on, both Tivan and ETFS Capital, will be enhanced through government intervention of different forms, whether it's warehouses, price floors, further subsidies, the critical mineral production tax incentive. All of those things are aimed at de-risking the earnings stream, which is already there and available to us. Do you want to add to that, or that's pretty much it? That was pretty much it. I'm trying to speak economist there for you, Bill. There's a question up the back. Just thanks for the compliment. I appreciate that. For those watching online, it was about our transparent and active communications. But now to your question, please, into the mic.
Do you think there might be some potential key man syndrome? And there's been such flattery tonight. What do you think there might be the potential issues or bottlenecks going forward the next 3 to 5 years? Not to be a cynic, but just as...
No, I think it's a question for the board as well. And I've tried I've addressed this concept repeatedly. I'm aware there's key man risk in the company. I'm actively trying to diffuse it. It comes with the journey that we've been on when you've got, I think, a strong vision and when you've managed a company in crisis, because we were, which required strong leadership to pull it through. And then we've had that active communication style naturally. There becomes that dependency, but I think it's absolutely manageable. And my aim is to run the company without fear or favour up until that point where I feel as though my contribution is starting to taper. Like, I don't want to go past that point. And I think with the team that we're bringing forward and the youth and experience that they're going to gain over the years ahead, without putting a time constraint, because I'm not really sure when it'll be. But I know that if I feel like I've reached that sort of second derivative where my contribution's not as valuable as it is, then yeah, I'll do the right thing by the company. But it won't be like a drone shield.
Yeah, and I might comment. I might comment as not the key person. As a board, we are very conscious of succession planning, of growing leadership and talent for all of us, right? Because we all bring a kind of suite of experiences, and we're very aware that Grant's out there, but we are right behind you, mate. But very actively involved. We talk all the time, and so I think recognising that we are where we are, and we would not be where we are without Grant, right? You actually, that driving force and vision, but probably the skill that Graham talked about, which is a capacity to bring people together. So, at times some of us have said, exactly why did we say yes, right? Because it was pretty exciting. I came on in April, right? 3 months after the shareholder thing, right? It was a pretty thin kind of, place to come into. But it was, I think, that commitment about values and passion. But we know that we're growing up. And if I kind of think about growing an organisation, explicitly having a leadership team, explicitly talking about the skill sets. As a board, I think we will talk about board renewal over time, in addition to the key person. Because while I think that that spotlight's very well deserved, I think Tivan's success is a sum of all the parts, right, including our small team. And if we think of how the market kind of looks at all these small caps and go, how do you make a judgment? I think that quality of management and leadership and, the values piece, that is really important. And what we've got to do is make that sustainable.
Yeah, thanks for putting that slide up, because I was just about to ask you to put that up. When we hit this 12 months ago, this slide had about half as many faces on it, right? And now it's got those faces there. And then particularly, as Christine just said, it's that line called leadership team. And you saw most of them, a number of them, up here today. And that's been a real focus of us, all four of us, to make sure that we have that quality leadership team that we have. And they have delivered a hell of a lot over the last year. One thing, Tammy failed to mention this, but one thing she's done is pulled together, we've now got a joint venture partner called Sumitomo, and they have a strong expectation about the quality of the reporting they're getting every month, and Tammy's been instrumental in putting that together from scratch. So just one example of what is actually being delivered in a way that you don't all necessarily see on a day-to-day basis. So, there is a lot of depth right behind Grant there, and it's really, and as a number of them mentioned when they were up here earlier, they've learned a hell of a lot over the last 12 months. And so they're gaining a lot of experience very quickly. And I suppose the final point is actually coming back to Sumitomo is one of the reasons they've signed up to us is because they got to test our leadership team firsthand, and they were impressed with what they saw. And I think that's testament to the quality of the team that Grant has pulled together around him.
Yeah, and if I may, in terms of looking forward to that transition without putting a time on it, we've emerged as a company that was in crisis, and we've talked about that now, and we are moving into project delivery, and we're building the project delivery capabilities. And if you're doing project delivery, then what you want to deliver is a project that operates well. And then once you've delivered a project and you know how to deliver a project that operates well, then you can deliver another project that operates well. And then eventually you become a company that is operating projects and knows how to get future projects into operation. And at that stage, that's what I see coinciding with Grant's tapering, is that you now have delivered a company that has the systems and processes and capabilities to deliver value for the long term.
So I think we need to potentially wrap this up, but I do want to emphasise that the mission we put together last year is quite real, and it's real for me. This idea of building a transformative company across the top end, the territory especially. The territory is such a different part of Australia, and it's really fundamentally important to me. And to have this opportunity to build potentially multiple projects near Alice, that was the reason I did what I did at the start. It's the reason I took the risks that I did. So no one should doubt the motivation and commitment that I have. And you put Timor on top of that, the chance to contribute to building that nation with this very complicated history with our own nation, and a unique opportunity. And so these things play out next couple of years. I don't really see that point of tapering for me, because the purpose is so broad and so important. I really think Tivan from here, I said it a couple of years ago, could change everything up north. I really fundamentally believe that. And so there's a lot to be excited about. And again, the open invitation from us all today to join us over the next 3 years. Okay, I think we need to get into formalities, or else we're going to run, and all you guys are going to forget that there are drinks and hors d'oeuvres at the back. So I have to, at this point, rip through 15 minutes of votes and so on and so forth. Please bear with me as I do that. But in terms of the substance of the meeting, the fun stuff, we'll probably wrap it here, I think, unless anyone else on the board has any final comments. Okay, we'll pause there. Thank you. Nick, could I borrow you? Okay, so what we're going to do now is pull through the resolutions. I have to, for once, speak from a script, something I never like doing, and make sure the votes are all in order so that we can have an official meeting. It's Nick Ong, our co-sec. So Nick, I'm just going to pull through this, correct? Okay, so where are the annual reports? Okay, so these are the formalities. The annual reports of Tivan are laid out up the back, which is important. That enables me to move on to the formalities. I'm asking that shareholders ensure that they have registered their attendance with representatives of Computershare. I saw that happening on the way in. Shareholders and validly appointed proxies and corporate representatives will now have received a green admission card. Looks similar to this. I'm advised that a quorum is present, certainly is, and officially, therefore, I declare the meeting open. I'm joined at this meeting by all of my fellow board members, being Christine Charles, Anthony Robertson, and Dr. Guy DeBell, Dr. Anthony Robinson as well. We also have present Nicholas Long, our co-sec, as well as several of our staff and technical advisory group who I've mentioned earlier today. Lorenzo of Grant Thornton Audit is attending in person. I met Lorenzo before. Please stand up and wave, Lorenzo. Now, the notice of the meeting and supplementary notice of the meeting were made available to all shareholders. I will take the notices of having been read. By agreeing to take the notices as read means that I will not read out the text of every resolution, just the header line All items of business will be voted on via a poll. The poll will be conducted by Computershare and voting cards will be collected at the end of the formal part of the meeting. The results of the poll will be tallied and announced on the ASX platform tomorrow. I will be allowing questions from shareholders, proxy holders and validly appointed corporate representatives on each resolution that has been considered. I ask that you keep questions to the matter being considered. Please address all questions to me as chair of the meeting. Please state your name before speaking and hold your green or yellow admission card so that I can see you're entitled to speak. After the poll is closed, shareholders will have an opportunity to ask questions about or make comments on the management of the company. Persons entitled to vote on the poll are all shareholders, representatives and attorneys of shareholders and proxy holders who hold green admission cards. On the reverse of your green admission card is your voting paper and instructions. Proxy holders have attached to their admission card a summary of proxy votes which details the voting instructions. By completing the voting paper, you are deemed to have voted in accordance with those instructions. In respect of any open votes a proxy holder may be entitled to cast, you need to mark a box beside the motion to indicate how you wish to cast your open votes. Shareholders also need to mark a box behind the motion to indicate how you wish to cast your votes. Please ensure you print your name where indicated and sign the voting paper. When you've finished, please lodge it in a ballot box and ensure your votes are counted. I now declare the poll open and we'll move on to the formal business of the meeting. I advise that a total of 1,079,557,409 valid proxies have been received for the meeting, representing a total of 48.27% of ordinary shares. I personally believe that shareholder turnout is a very, very important metric of company health, especially when it's broad, such as this. The proxy votes will be set out on the screen, and as such, I won't read the numbers out as we deal with the resolution. As chair, I am voting all open proxies where I've been expressly authorised to do so in favour of the resolution. The first item of business deals with the financial statements and reports of the financial year ended 30 June 2025, which are laid before the meeting. As previously mentioned, representatives from the company's auditors, Grant Thornton, are present today to answer any questions shareholders and proxy holders may wish to direct to them in relation to the conduct of the audit, the preparation and content of the auditor's report, the accounting policies adopted by the company in relation to the preparation of financial statements, or the independence of the auditor in relation to the conduct of the audit. I now invite questions and comments on the financial statements and reports. Are there any questions or comments on the reports for Lorenzo? Okay, there are no questions, so thank you. I will move straight on to the resolutions. Resolution 1 deals with the adoption of the remuneration report. This is a non-binding advisory ordinary resolution. The directors unanimously recommend that shareholders vote in favour of this resolution. I direct your attention to the screen, which displays the number of proxies for this resolution. Any open and usable proxies held by me as chairperson will be voted in favour of this resolution. Are there any questions or comments in respect of resolution 1? Okay, no questions or comments. As I have an interest in the next resolution, I now pass the chair role to Christine. Thanks, Christine.
Resolution 2 deals with re-election of Mr. Grant Wilson as a director. I advise that the resolution is an ordinary resolution. The directors, with Mr. Wilson abstaining, unanimously recommend that shareholders vote in favour of the resolution. I direct your attention to the screen, which displays a summary of proxies for the resolution. Any open and usable proxies held by me as chairperson will be voted in favour of the resolution. Are there any questions or comments in relation to the resolution? I will now hand the chair of the meeting back to Grant.
Thanks, Christine. Resolution 3 deals with the ratification of issue of shares under the May 2025 placement to ETFS Capital. I advise the resolution is an ordinary resolution. The directors unanimously recommend the shareholders vote in favour. I direct your attention to the screen, which displays the number of proxies for the resolution. Any open and usable proxies held by me as chairperson will be voted in favour of the resolution. Are there any questions or comments on this resolution? No, so I'll move to the next resolution, being Resolution 5, which deals with a similar ratification of the issue of options to ETFS Capital in connection with the May 25 placement. This is also an ordinary resolution. The directors also unanimously recommend that shareholders vote in favour. I direct your attention to the screen, which displays the number of proxies for. Any open and usable proxies held by me as chairperson will be voted in favour of the resolution. Are there any questions in relation to this resolution? Okay, moving straight along to the next resolution, being 5, which deals with the ratification of issue of shares under the September 25 placement to sophisticated and professional investors. I advise this is an ordinary resolution. The directors unanimously recommend that shareholders vote in favour of the resolution. I direct your attention to the screen which displays a number of proxies for the resolution. Any open usable proxies held by me as chairperson will be voted in favour of the resolution. Are there any questions or comments in relation to the resolution? No. And so, as I have an interest in the next resolution, heading back to Christine. Thanks, Christine.
Resolution 6 deals with the issue of STI performance rights to Mr Grant Wilson or his nominees. I advise that the resolution is an ordinary resolution. The directors, with Mr Wilson abstaining, unanimously recommend that shareholders vote in favour of the resolution. I direct your attention to the screen which displays a summary of proxies for the resolution. Any open and usable proxies held by me as chairperson will be voted in favour of the resolution. Are there any questions or comments in relation to the resolution? I now move to the next resolution. Resolution 7 deals with the issue of LTI performance rights to Mr Grant Wilson or his nominees. I advise that the resolution is an ordinary resolution. The directors, with Mr Wilson abstaining, unanimously recommend that shareholders vote in favour of the resolution. I direct your attention to the screen which displays a summary of proxies for the resolution. Any open and usable proxies held by me as chairperson will be voted in favour of the resolution. Are there any questions or comments in relation to the resolution? I will now hand back the chair of the meeting to Grant.
Thanks again, Christine. So we're up to resolution 8, and we're on track to keep this within 2 hours, so just bear with us, nearly done. I advise that resolution 8 deals with the issue of NED performance rights to Ms Christine Charles or her nominee. I advise that the resolution is ordinary resolution. The directors, with Ms Charles abstaining, unanimously recommend that shareholders vote in favour of this resolution. I direct your attention to the screen which displays a number of proxies for. Any open and usable proxies held by me as chairperson will be voted in favour of the resolution. Are there any questions or comments? If not, I move to a similar resolution, being 8, which is deals with the issue of NED performance rights to Dr Anthony Robinson or his nominees. I advise that the resolution is an ordinary resolution. The directors, with Dr Robinson abstaining, unanimously recommend that shareholders vote in favour of the resolution. I direct your attention to the screen, which displays the number of proxies for the resolution. Any open and usable proxies held by me as chairperson will be voted in favour of the resolution. Are there any questions or comments related to this resolution? No, so I'll move straight ahead to resolution 10, which deals with the issue of NED performance rights to Dr Guy Debelle or his nominees. I advise that the resolution is an ordinary resolution. The directors, with Dr Debelle abstaining, unanimously recommend that shareholders vote in favour of the resolution. I direct your attention to the screen which displays the summary of proxy votes for the resolution. Any open and usable proxies held by me as chair will be voted in favour of the resolution. Are there any questions or comments related to the resolution? No, so I'll move straight to resolution 11, which deals with the approval to amend Class A FY 2024 option terms. For context, these last 2 resolutions are taking options that we issued right at the start and just listing them on the ASX to sit alongside of the same options that were issued as bonus options to all shareholders a couple of years ago. I advise that this resolution is an ordinary resolution with Dr Robinson, Ms Charles, Dr Debelle abstaining. I recommend that shareholders vote in favour of the resolution. I direct your attention to the screen which displays a number of proxies for the resolution. Any open and usable proxies held by me as chair will be voted in favour of the resolution. Are there any questions or comments related to this resolution? No. As I have an interest in the next resolution, I'm going to pass the chair back to Christine for the final resolution.
Resolution 12 deals with the approval to amend the Class A Wilson options terms. I advise the resolution is an ordinary resolution. The directors, with Mr Wilson abstaining, unanimously recommend that shareholders vote in favour of the resolution. I direct your attention to the screen which displays a summary of proxies for the resolution. Any open and usable proxies held by me as chairperson will be voted in favour of the resolution. Are there any questions or comments in relation to the resolution? I will now hand back the chair of the meeting to Grant.
Okay. As that was the last resolution, I now ask that you finalise your votes. In a few minutes, Computershare will collect all your voting cards. If you have any questions about how to fill in your voting card, please raise your hand and Computershare will assist. This is the moment where polls will be collected. And so if you have a form that looks like this, please put it in this voting ballot box such as that, and we will wrap this meeting up. Thank you. As we're going around, I do want to emphasise that I believe once the votes are tallied tomorrow that the voting turnout will be above 50%. That's a remarkable outcome for an ASX-listed mining company. I looked at some peers the other day and they're down in the 20s, 25, low 20s, a couple at 30s. Those are the ones where you've got perhaps a dominant majority owner. It's very unusual to have a company that's not in some sort of corporate action with a voter turnout punching 50%. I think it's a great sign, as I said before, of the health of the company. So thank you so much for your engagement and thank you very much for the votes of support as well. Nearly there. All right. All right, there's definitely a murmur in favour of drinks and bites before the sun goes down outside. I think we're good. One more. One to go. Okay, that's it. As all voting cards have been collected, I declare the poll closed. The votes will now be counted by Computershare. Then we'll announce the results on the ASX platform tomorrow. No prizes for guessing the outcome. That therefore concludes the formal business of today's meeting. Formalities end right here, and I officially declare the meeting closed. Thank you so much.